been with us, or for many of us, for many years, and she has been a voice, sometimes a lone voice, but always a clear voice. We know where she stands, and we know now where she sits. We will hear her this afternoon. Susan George, born in the United States, has lived in France, has 2 nationalities. Is that allowed in France? It is. Is that allowed in France? As a father of a boy who has 3 nationalities, and as the father of a daughter who has 2, I know all the intricacies of more nationalities. You have published, Susan, many books on poverty, on food, on debt, on the World Bank, on the World Trade Organization. You are, in a way, the board of the Transnational Institute. You're the chair of that board, but you are also, in many ways, you have incorporated the Transnational Institute because we know you as the voice of the Transnational Institute in Amsterdam. And you have worked as a vice president for ATTAC, that is ATTAC France, is the Association for Taxation of Financial Transaction Trade Citizens, a very active organization that many of us know and respect. You were there as a vice president from 2000 to 2006, and you have also been an international board member of Greenpeace. You have honorary doctorates from Newcastle University and the Universidad Nacional de Educación a Distancia, Madrid, and you are the first outstanding public scholar award from the International Studies Association in 2007. Without further ado, Susan, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you and to hear your presentation in this series, the opening presentation. It's not the Economist.
Thank you, Luke. Always kind and generous in every way. That was a lovely introduction. And Farima, I'm glad to be back in your city as well. And thank you for opening what seems to be a very exciting series of debates. I won't be able to come to all of them, unfortunately, but the rest of you will. So I encourage you to follow up on what's said today, because there'll be a lot of variations on the theme, I think. And it's very exciting for me to be here and to be able to open the series. I'm going to try to follow the rule that I set myself in my first book, called How the Other Half Dies. And I think I said, here comes the most important sentence in this book, and I was directing it at students mostly, and it was, study the rich and powerful, not the poor and powerless. The poor already know what's wrong with their lives, and if you really want to help them, you should be examining what those who keep them where they are doing. And I've tried to follow that rule, and I've tried to follow it in my books, in my lectures, and I'm going to try to follow it today, so you must tell me when I don't do that properly. I think it's an opportunity today, whether or not you agree with the title, It's Not the Economy Stupid, and I think that may come up in the discussion, but certainly we can all recognize that Novi Oxfam and the ISS have put their finger on the central problem of today, which is a series of interlocking crises which are all making each other worse. There's a kind of negative feedback in which every crisis feeds into every other one and makes it more serious, and particularly for the poor. So I'll go very quickly over what those crises are, because I think for this audience, you already know what the major points are. First, we've had a social inequality crisis that has been growing up over the past 30 years, the years of neoliberalism since the mid-70s, basically. It was a huge push, particularly at the beginning of the 80s, with the debt crisis, with the overweening presence of the World Bank and the IMF, and this inequality crisis has been made more serious by the whole neoliberal ideology of privatization, massive privatization, so that governments have fewer instruments and people have fewer instruments that they can count on, and a lower social wage. Deregulation, which I prefer to call re-regulation, because what it is really is making new rules, but rules which benefit transnational corporations and the banks. Minimizing the state and saying the state should just get out of the market because the market can sort out everything, and so you reduce taxes on the rich, you reduce public spending, and you reduce transfer payments of whatever kind. Of course, in the less developed countries, this is called structural adjustment. Elsewhere, it can be called the shift also in value added, what economists call the value added, which is divided between capital and labor. And here for Europe, in any case, which is also part of our concern, since the mid-1970s, the share of capital has increased by 14%, from 26 in the mid-70s to 40 now as a share. And similarly, the slice of labor, the share of labor has gone down from 74 to 60%. So of course this compresses demand. This compressing of demand leads to overproduction. Henry Ford is dead. Nobody now is paying their workers so they can buy their cars. And this has also led to this enormous push towards neoliberalism, where the dream of totally free capital movements and totally free markets has taken over. And that is at the basis of the social and inequality crisis. I won't inundate you with figures, but the wider the World Institute for Development Economic Research of the UN in Helsinki has published a worldwide study showing that the top 10% has 85% of the world wealth, etc. And I could elaborate on that, but I think you know all of this. Now, of course, the second big crisis is the financial one, which has unfortunately pushed every other crisis off the agenda. What we read in the papers is every day, if you buy the Financial Times and you're a junkie like me, you have to cut out 4 or 5 things every day, try to sort them out into folders. This becomes impossible. Here I will go also very, very quickly, but the basis of this financial crisis has been 2 things: leverage and deregulation. Leverage simply means that you can take on more debt than exists in the known universe. The rule used to be that you had to have $1 or €1 or one whatever to borrow up to 10. But this was thrown totally to the winds, and it became very quickly 1 to 35, 1 to 40, 1 to 50. People were just borrowing and as if there was no tomorrow, but there's always a tomorrow, unfortunately. A series of bubbles which were sometimes in the US, sometimes more universal: the dot-com bubble, the savings and loan bubble, and of course on to the subprime bubble, which has exploded, particularly in the area of deregulation. And the way this crisis was met was by everybody all the official people going into denial. This is not going to be serious. This is going to be limited to the housing sector. It's not going to go any further. And of course, it's going to stay in the financial sphere, and it's not going to touch the real economy. And of course, it's going to stay in the northern countries. That was the next phase. And it's not going to touch the south, so don't worry. And I wish I had €1 for every time that I have seen in a piece that whatever the figure was, whatever index it was, the food price index, the consumer purchasing index, the shipping index, the house price index, and always the sentence ends, was worse than forecast. And I just would like to have €1 for every time something has been, in the past year and a half, worse than forecast. I'm going to give myself a little credit now, because in September of